It's 7 o'clock. I'll call a regular meeting of City Council to order, special meeting of City Council to order, pardon me. Ask that you join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We'll respect the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dennis, can you get me the clipboard back there, please? We have no guests signed in, but does anybody want to address the council? And that'll bring us to Department and Board reports. Michael?
Kind of a short report for you all this evening. You do have in front of you the revenue and expenditure departmental summary year-to-date report. I will make one note that the city's total revenues at this point are $3,053,256.52. Total expenses are $2,829,787.15, which is a difference of $223,469.37. Again, as always, if you would like a detailed summary, I have that available. Just see me after the meeting. I'll provide that to you. Another business, next month, as you all know, is the last month of our 2011-2012 fiscal year. I will have final budget revisions I will be presenting to council at our first meeting in June. Council should have in your boxes a copy of the 2010 through 2011 financial audit. There were no significant findings to report. If any of the council members would like to schedule an audit conference, let me know over the next couple of weeks. I'll just kind of ask openly. We have Ron Pugh coming on council in July. If you all want, maybe we could schedule to have him attend that audit just so he kind of knows if that's possible, or if anyone's interested. We may want to wait. But if anyone's interested in having an audit conference, please let me know and I can schedule that. City Hall is now accepting credit and debit card utility payments at our window and online. It's something kind of neat that we're doing, hoping that will encourage more people to pay using their cards. The online bill pay can be accessed also online. My link, if you just got on the City of Buckhannon's website, there's a link there that will send you over to our utility payment. There's been a delay in the delivery of our new street sweeper. That estimated delivery time is now in early June. And from a financial standpoint, later on in the consent agenda, I believe you're going to have your bill payments. There's a couple items for the record that I need to bring up to you all. So when you go in that section of consent agenda, you'll be advised of this. The first is that we have a couple of bills that have been submitted by Sam Ludlow with the Sanitary Board. As you all know, from time to time, our Sanitary Board will do some work for us with our storm sewers, and then they just bill back the general fund, and general fund pays them. The two bills that I have submitted, one is for storm drain work on the walk trail. That's for $11,745. And then the farmer's market, some storm drain work down there, wrapping up that for $20,314. Total amount of those two bills is $32,059 even. That will be expensed out of our general fund street line. We have a line designated for that to cover it. The street line is the line is storm sewer projects. You'll see those invoices in your bills, and those will be paid out of that line. Just bringing that one to your attention. The next item is an invoice from Small Ridge Electric. Let's see, that amount is for $9,246 even. That is for work done on Jawbone Park. I submitted that invoice to Jerry Arnold for his verification, and Jerry sent me back this email, which I'll read to you. The labor for the electric had to be billed at prevailing wage scale. We did not budget for that because the city had planned on doing this work themselves. This did change when the issue of service drop, of that being in the floodplain. That being in the floodplain changed a lot of the dynamics of the electrical work that had to be involved down there. The materials also increased because the power company supplies to wire the meter head, which was originally the bathrooms. However, that also had to be moved to its current location to meet the FEMA requirements. The overall grant budget spent almost twice as much in stone that was projected because of some unstable soil conditions and some concrete issues. Actually increased the cost by 5 or 6%. With this bill and all of the electric that had to be reconfigured and reassessed because of the floodplain from Small Ridge Electric, I'd ask that council be advised of this bill for $9,246. This will actually go a little bit over our current appropriated expenditures in that. So this will be an additional appropriation that'll have to be adjusted in our budget revisions that we'll be doing at the first council meeting in June. But I'll ask that you all consider these for approval along with the other bills when you get into consent agenda. But for the record, I wanted to have this put in.
I believe copies of those were in the packet.
I believe so. If there's no other questions, that's all I have.
Questions for Michael?
I have a question. Michael, if you have an audit conference, will you have the auditors make a presentation at that conference?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We usually just, any council members, not all council members are usually interested or can attend that. So if everyone's interested in attending that, we can set up something and organize it, but they can put on a presentation for whoever's interested. Just let me know.
Well, I think it's important for the city council to have a conference with the auditors on an annual basis, and we at least ought to schedule to do that.
Okay. I can set something up when they're available. I'll let you all know a date and time for that. Probably be easier just to pick something and let you all know. Usually sometime in the fall they're available. So I'll get back to you. Thanks.
Any other questions for Michael? Chief Gregory?
Good evening. A few updates for council tonight on some activities that the police department has been involved in over the last month. Obviously, Strawberry Festival concluded just last week, and things went well. We were happy to have all of our officers trained and out of the academy and on the street, and being able to deal with the situations that arose last week and a lot of the extra requests that come for the police department. There were a few situations that required our immediate attention last week. However, we were able to respond to those in an effective and efficient manner and able to diffuse a couple of situations. I would like to just publicly recognize the officers of the police department for the work that they do year-round, but especially during the Strawberry Festival. Oftentimes they have to work a lot of extended hours, typically during the weekends of the festival. And of course this year it was a 2-weekend affair. The officers will work 12-hour shifts. So this requires a lot of time being on duty and actually on the road. Would commend their efforts for the hours that they put in, as well as a lot of the stuff that they have to deal with, a lot of trying things during that week. So I just publicly commend their efforts. They do a really good job. The second thing I'm pleased to announce that just last week, just before the festival kicked into high gear, we concluded our Citizens Police Academy. It was a very good course. This was as you recall, the first course that we'd had in the last 10 years of this nature, and we had a really good turnout from interested folks from the community. And as always, one of the biggest benefits of the class, and this one sure didn't fail us this time, we got to know each other on a personal basis, and it really opened the door up for some good dialogue between the police officers and the citizens that took part in this academy. So another academy is in the books. We're very pleased that we were able to put this on and do anticipate this becoming an annual event. Some other outreach activities now that we're getting our force back up to speed. And we do anticipate Morgan LeBerth. He's been out of the academy since April 20th. He's been going through his phase 2 field training since then. He's doing really well, a very good job. We anticipate releasing him from field training here in the next couple of weeks onto his own. So as we progress towards having fully trained staff at this point, we're able to branch out into more outreach activities, some of the activities that we've involved ourselves in over the years. One of the activities, we've been a partner with the Head Start here in Upshur County for a couple years now. We did renew this agreement here a couple years ago for the upcoming school year. One of the things, or many of the things that we do with the partnership, we provide a training for their staff and their teachers on law enforcement related topics, particularly in the educational realm. We provide that at the beginning of the year, of the school year in August. But another activity that we provide is outreach activities, educational activities for the students. And the most recent, some of you may have seen this in the newspaper, the city has, the police department has a safety frog. Somebody dress up in the costume, and it's kind of one of the tools that we use to get across to children the safety message that we take into the classrooms. Well, for the last year or so, it was just known as the safety frog. And so we collaborated with Head Start and decided to have a little contest with each of the 12 classes that are in Head Start here in Upshur County to see if they could name the frog. So this was at the time of leading up to the election, so we made it a little educational activity, kind of stimulating their creativity, and it helped them to learn about the election process, because each student would come up with an idea, and as a class they would vote on their favorite name. And so the winning vote would be what that class submission would be. So each class submitted one name. Between my staff, our officers here at the police department, we received each of the 12 names, and we decided on the name Pokes. Pokes is an acronym that Mrs. Bailey's class over at the Hinkle Drive Head Start came up with. And bear in mind, these are 4-year-olds that came up with this name. Pokes stands for Police Officers Keep Everyone Safe. So forevermore, the safety frog is known as Pokes, thanks to Head Start. So that's just one of the many activities that we do with our outreach efforts through this partnership. Another activity was just today up at the high school. Each year, the elementary schools and now the middle school have a Rachel's Challenge Field Day. And as some of you know, Rachel's Challenge was started by the young lady who perished during the Columbine disaster about 13 years ago. And it was her dream to really touch the world and make a difference through kindness. And so that's really caught on. It's a national effort, but here locally there are Friends of Rachel's or Kindness Club. And each spring they have a Rachel's Challenge Field Day, just in honor of the message that Rachel's Challenge spreads nationally. And we were on hand. We saw almost 1,000 students. In fact, we got the exact number. There were 957 students up at the football stadium today. And we were on hand offering a drug and alcohol safety awareness message. We had some of our handouts and some of the things that we were able to deliver this message to a lot of kids today. Another outreach activity that you can look for soon, that's kind of been down for the last year just because of the transition. We do anticipate having our bike patrol back up and running. We've been getting the bikes tuned in, getting the uniforms ready, and so we anticipate having that up and running in the next week or so. The final topic that I'd like to address with the council tonight, and if I could turn your attention to the audience, I'd like to introduce Mr. Aaron Cohen, gentleman here in the front.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Cohen, I've known Mr. Cohen for a number of years, both personally and professionally. And as you folks on council know, for a number of years we have taken great pains to make sure that our officers receive the best tactical training that we can provide for them, what we're able to provide for them. And the reason behind this is that oftentimes there are situations where we receive a call, and we've seen this several times over the last few years, that require it's a more high-risk type of response. For instance, if you have somebody that's barricaded, or if you have somebody that is known to be dangerous, known to be armed, it requires a different type of response than your typical law enforcement response. So we have taken great pains to train our officers tactically to be able to respond in this special type of scenario that does arise, even here in Buckhannon, certainly. During this time period, as we provided this training and this equipment for our officers, we have sought the services of a volunteer medic. As you know, Mr. Skeeter Queen has served for a number of years as our volunteer tactical medic. And a tactical medic is an individual who, when an officer responds to a high-risk situation, whether it's a shooting in progress scenario or a barricaded individual, a tactical medic is somebody that's able to respond with the officers and provide medical services right then and there should they be needed. Now obviously this doesn't take EMS out of the equation. EMS is still very much a factor if you have something like that. But EMS in their traditional role will stage outside of the immediate area of threat. They will not come with the officers. In fact, they don't respond on scene until the scene is declared safe. So we have sought the assistance of a volunteer medic, somebody who is trained as a paramedic, has special advanced medical training, and we've taken them under our wing with council's blessing and allow them to train with the officers and provided them the tactical type training with the understanding that they are not a police officer. They don't go in and do all the things that the police officer do. They just stage closer to the scene and are able to provide advanced medical care closer to the scene and more immediately than what somebody from EMS who may be staged a few blocks away or farther. For those that are familiar with the medical field, seconds can mean the difference between life or death oftentimes. So we have, in an effort to safeguard our officers and provide the best, not only the best training, but the best security that we can for our officers, we have sought the assistance for a volunteer medic when they're needed. When they're on an on-call basis, and if the situation arises where they're needed, we're able to call them out and have that enhanced component to our safety. It's one of those situations where it's good to have somebody who's willing to volunteer and somebody with education, somebody with training, somebody with the experience of that caliber willing to do that. It's better to have that and not need it than need it and not have it. Because again, if it would mean on down the road, and we don't know what tomorrow will bring, we don't know what next week will bring, but we like to train for the worst case scenario and hope for the best. So if the situation would ever arise, we would want to have the best training and the best security, the best safety for our officers that we could provide. And that was the reasoning behind bringing Mr. Queen on as a tactical medic to be able to respond in a situation should something like this arise. And so I introduced Aaron Cohen to you tonight because Mr. Cohen is currently a firefighter paramedic with the city of Bridgeport. And he's been a paramedic since 2002 and a firefighter for 20 years, since 1992. Even though he works for the city of Bridgeport, he does live right here in Upshur County. So I do have his training showing his paramedic licensure, his advanced cardiac medical care, his firefighting training, all of his training, which is pretty impressive in its own right. I do have that available if council would want to enter into the record. But I introduced him because he truly is an asset right here in our backyard. And in conversations with Mr. Cohen, he has agreed to volunteer should a situation ever arise where we would need to call on somebody with this type of training to be able to respond closer to a scene like this. he's volunteered to do that, to respond with our officers and provide advanced medical care should that be required. And so I come to council tonight to just ask for your blessing to allow us to take Mr. Cohen under our wing as a volunteer, and understood that it's a volunteer basis, there's no compensation for this, as a volunteer tactical medic, and to be on call should we need to call him out to a volatile situation, and to allow him to train on an as-needed basis with our officers. I will let you know that I have checked with our insurance company. The insurance company said he would be covered under our law enforcement liability, so there's no issue there. So I would just seek council's blessing on allowing us to designate Mr. Aaron Cohen as our tactical medic.
So you'll have 2 tactical medics now?
No, sir, we're asking that we're just switch this from Mr. Queen to Mr. Cohen. Mr. Cohen would be taking the position that Mr. Queen had held for us for the last few years.
I didn't elect to resort my card, so my paramedic card expired.
Okay. Do you need a motion, Mayor?
I don't know if we need to do that. I mean, I see this as part of your operating as a department head, and Aaron's a volunteer. You've covered the insurance, you've covered his qualifications. I know Aaron, and he and I know each other through the firefighting scenario, but as council, I would think we don't want to start micromanaging our department managers.
Council approved this. I'm thinking that if we want to have our insurance company cover him for his benefit, we ought to take council action on that. What do you think, Dave?
Well, 1, it doesn't hurt. 2, your police chief is asking for your blessing. So given that, I think Matt perhaps is asking for you to micromanage him just a little bit tonight to satisfy that.
Motion to micromanage.
Well, I don't think we're micromanaging by doing this. I think we're just, Matt came to us and wants our blessing, so let's give it to him.
Is that a second?
I'll first it or second it, either one.
Any further discussion or question? You understand what we're doing? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
And thank you.
Aaron,
No,
thank you
I
very
look forward
much.
to being part of your department, being there in case they need somebody. I'm furthering my training actually through Fairmont. I'm going to be taking tactical medic classes. And sometime in August, whenever your fire department tests, I'm actually looking to become part of this fire department because I live here closer to home. So I'm looking to further this more for the city of Buckhannon.
Appreciate your volunteer.
Glad you're with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I do have his certificates that I'll enter into the record, and I just need to get this back into the file on him. And I do have the police report for April. We weren't able to get it into your packets. I apologize in advance, just with everything with the festival has kept us behind, but I will submit it for the record tonight.
You'll need these back.
Yeah, if I could get those back once you get it into the record, I'll share it in this file. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Matt?
Kenny, I have a question. Matt, I had a phone call a couple weeks ago from an individual that was looking for contributions or donations for the, I think it was police lodge or fraternal or police for adopting, I guess, a child. And what they do is they take them out to different stores and so forth to buy clothing and other kinds of things. Each child they're going to spend $250. Or has this been done in the past? Is this a program, an ongoing program?
Yeah, sir. This is not a program of the city police. A lot of folks get either the miscommunication from the telemarketers themselves or the misunderstanding that it's the Buckhannon City Police either doing or directing the soliciting for this program. The program that you speak of is known as Christmas with the Cops, and it's a program that's sponsored by the Fraternal Order of Police, which is a fraternal organization of police officers from a 4-county region, Upshur County included in this region. They have, for a number of years, directed telemarketers to raise money for this event. This is an event that I know the FOP has sponsored in December for the last several years. So that much is accurate. I have gotten, and I'm glad you bring this up, because I have, my office has received more than one complaint about their methods. You know, as far as the program itself, it's a good sound program. Christmas with the Cops, it's a good cause, but I'm not entirely convinced that their methods are the most sound.
Well, when you say telemarketers, are they getting a percentage of the money that that person would donate for this program?
Yes, sir, they are. It's a company, that's their business, is to raise money for the organization, but their fee is a percentage of the monies that are collected.
Do you know what that fee is?
Not off the top of my head, no. I know that you know, it's not a small fee, I know that, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I wouldn't want to say something and be incorrect.
Well, the phone call I received, the individual, I won't name the individual, he gave me his name, but he gave me the definite impression that it was somehow related to the City of Buckhannon Police Department.
Yeah, that's
And when I further inquired, I don't think he was real comfortable, and I said, well, I want to talk to Chief Gregory about this whole program.
Yeah, I'm glad that you do. And anybody that, you know, that has that same type of scenario, certainly, you know, if they don't feel comfortable, you know, check your resources, check things out. They can call my office, we can discuss it with them. You know, check it out before they make a snap decision on donating. The program itself is not a bad program. I'm an advocate for Christmas with the Cops. I've seen the benefit of what it does with children who are less fortunate. So it's a good program. But as far as from my understanding, the misrepresentation that it's the city police department calling, I'm not so sure I agree with that. I have gotten a couple of calls here in the last couple of weeks regarding this. We are bringing it up with the FOP to discuss, that we have in fact documented calls of people complaining about this, and they need to address it with their telemarketers, because if they're letting on like it's the city police department doing this, it's not.
Well, they don't indicate they're a telemarketer at all. And if people get these kind of calls, they should ask what percentage actually goes to what the program is for. Sometimes they'll be shocked how small it is and how much the telemarketers make.
Probably so, because the telemarketing business is obviously, they're in business to make money, and they're going to make money off of the percentage of what they take from the money that's taken in from these donations. So a lot of folks think that if they donate, 100% is going to go to the city police department, and that's not the case. They're donating to a telemarketing firm who's acting on behalf of a fraternal organization which represents a 4-county area.
So if somebody wanted to donate to the FOP for Christmas with the Cop,
they could donate directly to the FOP.
Donate directly, and 100% would go to that.
That's correct.
And how would they do that?
I'm personally not a member of the FOP, but Doug Loudon is, I believe he's either the secretary or the treasurer. So he would probably be the first point of contact here locally. If somebody would want to call, they could call our office, and our secretary could put folks like that in touch with Mr. Loudon.
Well, if they sent a check, Buckhannon FOP?
I don't know that if they should put Buckhannon FOP. It's FOP Lodge number 114. Again,
Lodge.
Since it represents a 4-county area.
114?
Yes, sir.
They could send it to City Hall.
And we would make sure that Mr.
Memo it
gets
for Christmas with a Cop?
correct.
From my own perspective, Kenny, I would rather have somebody from the FOP make a presentation to us and say what they're actually doing. Because I don't feel real comfortable with what the whole process is. I mean, am I wrong, Matt, saying that?
No, I don't think so, because you just echo some of the other complaints that I've heard.
But you have to be a police officer or a retired police officer to be a,
To be in the FOP, yes, sir.
okay, so you have to have previous law enforcement, current law enforcement responsibilities.
Law enforcement or correctional. They allow correctional officers in.
Any other questions for Matt? Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, man.
City Engineer, Sam Ludlow. Thanks again, Aaron.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
Report on the sanitary board meeting, which was postponed because of Strawberry Festival, but was held this past Tuesday. We had discussion, Michael presented the budget, and we talked about the budget. Left it with the board members for consideration at the June board meeting. We had considerable discussion about our operating permit. We had received the draft permit about a month ago and had reviewed the draft permit, and because of some matters in the permit that we weren't comfortable with, they keep making our requirements more severe all the time. Jay Holland and Tim Rock and I had gone to Charleston to meet with our permit writers and had some discussion, not real fruitful. We followed that up with a written comment. There is a formal comment period available to us as a permittee and also available to the public. And we did make formal comment by letter from the mayor and from notes from us as staff. And we're waiting for the permit. They're obligated to respond to our comments, but they're not obligated to change the permit because of our comments. And we've been around this issue. The Buckhannon River has very low flow conditions in dry weather. And their statistics, which they get from the United States Geological Survey, they don't make it up themselves, shows that in the typical low flow conditions, what is comparable to the 100-year flood elevation, that's just a common standard that's used. They use a 7 consecutive day low flow that occurs every 10 years, so 7Q10 they call it. But under those conditions, the discharge from the sewer plant is 65% of the flow in the river. And because of that, and because of certain quality parameters in the river, our discharge requirements become very severe. And that's fine, but they are beginning to get so severe that we could be looking at pretty major expenditures to add process. It's not that our plant doesn't work very well, but it was not intended to achieve the level of treatment that they're proposing. So we had some discussion about that matter at the board meeting, and I think we will continue to try to relieve those conditions. And there may be some administrative matters that we can attempt to do. We've argued for some time, and they seemed a little bit more receptive this time than they have in the past, of identifying particular conditions where our discharge requirements would be this severe, but during those conditions our flow isn't as high. They relate our design flow to the low flow conditions in the river, and we aren't at that level of discharge under those flow conditions. So doesn't seem like they're making the right comparison. And if we can get them to do that, maybe that will be all the relief that we need, and they seem to be willing to do that. We also reported on Ritchie Street. We'd actually not done a lot of work on Ritchie Street for 2 or 3 weeks because of the weather and the festival. We've had a good week this week, and we've been going from Fayette Street to the alley between Fayette and Barber, which that alley is the end of the project. And as of today, we probably only have between 30 and 40 feet more mainline pipe to do, but we still have a number of connections, the old pipelines into the new, plugging the old pipelines, grading work, drop inlets, and surface restoration. So there's still quite a bit of work. We did have a couple of people do CDL license testing. We talked about some of our other sewer line work that we're planning to do. We've been planning to make sewer service available to Weatherford. That's been a matter of discussion for maybe 2 or 3 years. It's still pending, but we think that may come to pass. Of course, we're preparing to do the East Main Street, a short segment of sewer repair that's associated with the sidewalk project. We talked about some operation and maintenance matters at the sewer plant, our grit removal, had a pump go down. We like to have spare equipment, so when something happens, we can pull it out and put the new piece of equipment in. We talked about getting a spare pump for that application, but haven't felt like we could afford it. Pump went down. We had to get a new pump. It took between 2 and 3 weeks, and then it took us 2 or 3 days of pretty hard and unpleasant work to recover. Whereas if we'd had that spare on hand, we would not have had that recovery at all. We had 2 people go to a week-long certification class a couple weeks ago. We have a couple other people that will be going later in the summer and fall. And we continue to pursue a new employee. We have received the applications and we've conducted interviews, but we haven't made a final selection, and probably will re-interview a couple of those people. That was all.
Questions for Sam?
I got a couple questions.
Go.
Spare pump, what is the cost of a spare pump, Sam?
$5,000.
And two, in regard to your discharge and flow, have the parameters changed in recent years, or are these same old things that we've been doing all along?
The parameters as far as the flow in the river and the quality of the river, no, I don't believe that they have particularly. Standard secondary treatment, which is across the country, the minimum level of treatment that's required. The particular pollutant that we're looking at, biochemical oxygen demand, is 30 parts per million. When the design was done on this plant, that was the original plan. But then there was about a year administrative delay during the design of this plant, and they dropped that 30 down to 20. We began operating at 20. I think probably about 12 years ago, and these permit cycles are 5 years long. They dropped it from 20 to 10. We didn't have any problem in meeting that. That is our limit right now. Well, now they're proposing to drop it to 3. And we won't routinely meet 3.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, they continue to do evaluation of the river, and their formulas, their calculations show that the river can't support the oxygen demand. That's the parameter that measures the health of the river, is available oxygen in the water. And if you put pollutants in the water that use the oxygen, then it's not available for the organisms in the river.
And if you can't meet their requirements, then you're gonna have to put some kind of additional
Treatment,
treatment.
yes, we'd have to add a process.
Do you have any idea what that cost would be to the city?
Well, not really at this point, but that's one of the issues, was oxygen demanding pollutants. But another are these toxic pollutants, mostly heavy metals. And we've been through this with zinc. I've talked about that at these meetings. And now they're imposing a limit. There's 10 toxic pollutants that we monitor, but they haven't had limits. And that's kind of deceiving, because they watch them, and if they get too high, then they put on limits. And it's important to monitor them. If something gets out of hand, you really ought to be looking for what's the problem. But now they've added copper. Well, we did quite an investigation on the zinc, and got a cost estimate from a consulting engineering firm. We're talking about removing a few parts per billion for this 7Q10, or 7 consecutive days every 10 years. And it would have cost somewhere between $5.5 to $8 million to add a process that would remove those 10, 15 parts per billion during those time periods. So that's almost as much as the whole plant cost.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Whose turn? Kelly, Water Department.
We also, in our board meeting, Michael, a proposal out for a budget for the board to review. We're continuing work on East Main Street, installed another valve on Monday. We have one more valve to put out here right in front of City Hall, which is going to involve a little bit more work. We're going to try a hydro stop, which will actually stop any flow coming down Main Street, so we don't have to hurt all the businesses on Main Street with a shutdown, because whether we do it at night or in day, we're going to affect somebody. So we're going to try to hydro stop that to replace this valve here, and then we'll be starting to move the meter barrels out of the sidewalk down through there on both sides as we go, which it could take as much as a month. It just depends on how it goes. We'll be busting probably a section out as much as a 4 by 5 section of concrete at a time, and then as we discussed in one of our supervisors meetings, we'll have to have one side at least back for foot traffic. So after we get done, one side will have to have at least an inch to half inch of blacktop, so that pedestrian traffic can go down through there. But that way we're completely out Sam's way, then he can move in and just keep on going that way. Sed basin, we've done some sed basin cleaning at the plant. We do that twice a year, which is remove any sedimentation in the bottom of the basins. Another thing we're looking at is replacing the line on Island Avenue. Jay's been doing some engineering work on that, discussion on that as far as how we want to go about it and the permitting. We finished hydrant flushing this past month. All the hydrants were flushed. We didn't really have any issues with the operations of them. We've got an ongoing project with the Kennedy hydrants. They're hard to open and close. We've budgeted for that over the years, that we do that as we can, replacing the Kennedys with a up-to-date hydrant. And then we'll also continue to paint the hydrants, and
Most of the rest of it is just routine work as far as service renewals or any leaks crops up or anything like that. That's all I have.
Question for Kelly. Dave McCauley.
Thank you, Mayor. I still await some council input on the noise ordinance, but that said, Mr. Doss would like me to revisit a section in the ordinance that's actually going to adopt the federal decibel standards on things. The only other input I got was from you, Mayor. You mentioned that we ought to add school buses to some of the other emergency vehicles that, relative to noise and use of brakes and that kind of thing. So please review that ordinance. If we get enough input, feedback between now and one of our 2 meetings in June, we may be able to present that on first official reading of the noise ordinance. Last week was Friendly Way Day and Service to Youth Champion Day, and the mayor and I attended both of those events. The mayor presented his proclamations. I think those things were well received, as they always are. The First Community Bank ordinance we're going to take up under new business. It's been kind of a real estate intense time. A couple of meetings ago, we were trying to sell the Beach Street property. Right after that, we did the progressive bank deeds, and last week we actually closed on that matter, and you have in your packet tonight the actual recorded deeds along with correspondence between myself and Mrs. Tenney, president of Progressive Bank. The other things that I'm working on, Mr. Himes and I have almost completed our title updates relative to the Route 20 annexation, and I've been working with Mr. Doss and Mr. Holland on the Armory property annexation too, and I don't want to steal Michael and Jay's thunder, but that project seems to be coming along as well. The only other thing that I'm just starting to work on is the vacant property ordinance that we've been talking about for a year or so, and I don't know if I'll have it ready at the next meeting, but it's another one of those things that's coming down the pike. Mr. Clemens and I really need to develop a mutual comfort level with what we're going to be doing there. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, there's a fee that the city will be permitted to assess to the keepers of these properties, and I think the council really needs to be thinking about what would be an appropriate fee. If you have a property that's not being used for any purpose, it's just sitting there empty, what should, once that declaration is made, once that finding is made that this property fits that criteria, what should be the fee? Should it be imposed monthly, quarterly, annually? There's really not a whole lot of instruction in the state statute that was adopted back in July of 2010. So I'm going to be counting on you all to provide some guidance as to what you think would be appropriate. That's all I have as far as things that we're working on right now until we get into your new business for the evening.
That question.
Yeah.
Mr. McCauley, there's people back on the back row there that I'm sure are interested in the Tucker Street, Ritchie Street. I'm disappointed not to see that on the agenda. I'd like for you to address it, and Kenny wants you to know about it too.
It is on D9.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed that then. I was hoping we'd get to that so those folks could go, but if you want to wait till then, okay.
Well, we can move that up.
I see that Cracker's moving some grass and chop some trees down, that kind of stuff, which looks nice, but the building's still not coming down. What's the status on that?
Well, I had sent emails out to city council, and you folks, if you left a message, if you'll give me an email address, I'll copy you every time I send something to the council about this project. But the last Monday of Strawberry Festival, I talked with Cracker, and he said that they were going down this week to get his the week of the festival to get their licenses. They called Charleston and they said they weren't ready, so they were going this week. I do have copies of their certificates of completion. There's 3 of those gentlemen who've completed the class. I have copies of those certificates in my office. They're working. They said that they would continue to work. As soon as they got their licenses, they would try to get that cease and desist order lifted. We have reason to believe that won't be a problem. And also this week received a letter on behalf of Bob Stell that states that Cracker has his permission to tear the building down. That's not an issue. So it's progressing. It's coming along. I know it's not moving real fast, but it is moving. And I'm as anxious to see it on the ground as anybody. If y'all have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Well, we have copies of the deed, and that's what we had found, that there was nothing in that deed
Yeah.
that said that he couldn't tear that down.
And we have the specific clarity on that issue in a letter that I shared with council, and it specifically states in there, and we can hold them to it, that Bob Stell doesn't, I think the letter says specifically grant permission to Mr. Tenney to tear the building down. So it's not an issue. That is no
Is
longer.
it going to be torn down?
He's got to get the asbestos off of it first. But I'm sure it's going to be torn down. The first thing Cracker said was he wanted that block because he's doing a fill of some kind, wherever, someplace.
I think, excuse me, he did mention to one of the neighbors that perhaps he would just put a new roof on it and leave it as is.
I don't think that's going to be the case. That's not what we've been told. That is not what we've been told. So far, Cracker continues to proceed on his word. He's going in the direction that he said he's going to go. Now, you know, I've told you here before, trying to nail down a specific date timeline just doesn't work. There's too many factors at play. But he's continuing to work, and they did go to school. I did see there with my own eyes the original signed certificates of completion. They have completed the class. They will get their licenses, and they will proceed.
Well, I have a question. In one of the newspaper articles, Mr. Tenney blatantly told you guys to go ahead and go, put him in jail. He didn't care.
Connie, he never said that to us.
Well, that was what was in the article, and
I know.
I do have a copy of that here.
I think he said this to a reporter, they can go ahead and put me in jail. He never said to me, go ahead and put me in jail. He never said to our judge, go ahead and
Well,
put me
have
in
you
jail.
fined him any of the fines?
No, we're not going to, as long as he keeps going.
How long are you gonna hold his hand for him to do this?
Connie, we're going to let him proceed. And I think we're moving in a direction, the best action we've had in 3 years, we have going right now. And we're going to let that play out, because I think it's going to come to fruition.
What happens August 1st, 2012? There has been no money paid to Mr. Stell. According to the deed, everything has to be paid by August 1st, 2012. Is Mr. Stell going to come back in and say, then I want it back? What?
That is not in
Well,
our
according to
purview
the
at all.
State Department, it comes back to the city.
Fine, no, what comes back to the city?
It is the city's responsibility to take care of hazardous properties within the city limits.
According to who?
The head of the State Health Department. I spoke with him. Hang on, I'll find it here in just a second. Tony Turner. And he,
I had
must,
never talked to Tony Turner, but
well, that was the name.
Herb Hillary works underneath him.
Okay.
Yes, and he gave me his name as
Yeah.
well.
I talk to him frequently.
Well,
But I must say that it's a joke in Charleston what's going on here, because when I mentioned the corner of Ritchie and Tugger Street and Mr. Tenney's name, that man started laughing. He said, oh, I know who this is. I know the situation. Now, that's coming from Charleston. We've already had situations in Buckhannon where if things had been handled maybe a little differently, we wouldn't have had the fiasco we had a couple years ago with the CBB. 3.5 years. At that time, Mr. Stell owned that property. We asked you then to please take care of it. And he
we
sold
tried
it.
to explain the circumstances that we've gone through. I guess if we had to pull out all the records and show all the things that we've done, and it didn't work. I alluded to wrestling with a baby alligator over a piece of candy. That's what we've been into. And I'm not going to sit here tonight and go through this whole scenario again. We are going to see this to fruition. I think we're working in that direction, and I don't think it's helpful for us to sit here and have these kinds of discussions about what happened in the past. Let's talk about what we're doing today and what's happening over there today. Because today forward is the only way we're going to get it done. Hassling over what happened 3 years ago or 6 months ago is of no benefit to anybody. It doesn't help the situation a bit. And I don't think we're gaining anything by sitting here having these arguments every meeting or every other meeting. We're trying to get this done. If you don't believe that, I don't know what else to tell you. But we're working on it and we're doing the best we can do. Scott Preston used the words, we've brought everything to bear, every weapon to bear that we have available to us on this. And it's moving in the right direction. And I think if everybody will just back up and give it a chance, we'll get that building out of there, and hopefully we'll get it out before the 1st of August. And what happens to the property between Bob Stell and Cracker Tenney is of no concern to us. We have nothing in that. Our attorneys tell us that. A couple other attorneys I've talked to say we have nothing in that relationship between Bob Stell and Carl Tenney. We have nothing in it, and we're not going to get into it. It's not for us to do. And you can smirk and shake your head all you want to, but we have nothing in it.
Thank you for being so respectful.
Thank you for being respectful.
Let me interject too.
Just a minute.
Okay.
Well, the little boys can't hide in the trees anymore.
That's for sure.
That's progress.
That's right. Dave?
The licensing could take as much as 3 weeks from the state, is that correct?
This is what Jay Holland told us, and this is the second week, and I hadn't talked to Cracker. I was out of town for a couple of days. Right. I'll try to call him tomorrow and see if they went and got their licenses. If you'll send me an email.
You have our email.
Yeah, if we get an email, we'll report to you. I'll try to keep you up on everything that's going on, every piece of information I have. I pass along to the council and be glad to copy you on it if I have an email address.
But there's
Rick has sent you ours, but whenever I spoke with you, you have ours. So.
I don't recall receiving.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
But there's a chance that this could take 3 weeks as far as the licensing.
Yeah, and then another week or two to get the permit. Don't put us on a timeline. I'm telling you, it's impossible to do. It's just impossible to put a timeline on.
The second thing I want to...
I'd like to do it too.
The second thing I want to interject is that we need to learn from this whole process for the future. And that's what I want to try to focus on, for the future. And as David said, he's going to do an ordinance for vacant lots. And we need to get a better timeline, obviously, when we have these kind of situations in the future.
Dave, could you explain that better? The ordinance for vacant lots, is that an ordinance we have now?
Dave McCauley can explain
it.
Okay.
Okay.
In July of 2010, the state legislature authorized municipalities to impose a fee on properties that have been put on a registry declared by the governing body as being vacant. And municipalities can charge this fee. The fees can be then restricted for purposes of enhancing the Housing Enforcement Board opportunities to raise properties. Right now, there is not a budget line item per se for that, and I don't want folks to, as I mentioned at the last meeting or two, depending upon what revenue we receive from that, depending upon the number of properties that would be affected, it's not like there's going to be overnight $100,000 or $1 million or something like that generated from this ordinance. But something is better than nothing.
Right.
And when you have a situation that might require a $10,000, $20,000 investment to raise a property such as this one, there would be funds available that the state has authorized the city to collect for that kind of purpose. So.
And you can make those, my understanding is, we can make those fees, those annual fees, pretty stiff. And there's two reasons for that. One is we'll raise some money that we can take care of properties with, and two, if it's stiff enough, they'll come in and do something about it.
It's a coercive statute.
Yeah.
The other thing that is outgrown of this particular, and I think it was the city of Wheeling that really got a lot of this legislation started. Right. And then it passed the state, was the fact that typically the lien holder is the bank. And typically the lien holder wants to do the right thing. They don't want their property to be a lower value. That's not true in this case.
Yeah, this has been a real good
There's a very different scenario here. We had another situation similar to this 4 or 5 years ago down on Randolph Street. It was a much smaller house, but it was exactly the same scenario in that the lien holder was not an institution, not a bank. It was a former owner of the property that sold it on a land contract. And the individual that went in there to do the work did more damage to the structure than they did repair. And Mr. McCauley remembers that took quite a while to get that resolved. But it was a much smaller house. It was much easier to, try to get that whole process cleaned up and done. And it sits now as an empty lot.
I'm aware of the lady that wrote the letter to the Record Delta that took umbrage with my use of the term hit list. And I would like to think that I have been the voice of empathy relative to some of these property owners and their problems in meeting things. People who have been sick, people who have been unemployed, people who don't live here. What I mean by hit list and what I meant at that time and what I mean by using it tonight is believe it or not, the hit list, which Mr. Clemens and I work with great regularity. He's the guy that writes most of the letters, and probably for every 20 letters he writes, I might write one as a follow-up to it. We typically get very good response from those kinds of interventions. There's probably 5 to 10 properties that we struggle with and have struggled with steadfastly. However, if we went back 5 years ago and identified the 5 worst properties that we continued to struggle with as far as getting them to clean up their properties, those properties are off the list. They have been fixed. The Randolph Street property, for one. The property over off of Cleveland Avenue that had 23 and a half motor vehicles in its back lot. That was another one. I mean, the list goes on and on. The Rushmazel property. This property that we're working on now. So we are getting there. It's not as though government does not work at all, but admittedly it works slower than what we would like to see it work to abate these problems.
We'll do better in the future, I think.
We can try to do faster, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the positive things about the ordinance that you're working on.
It'll help.
Right now, I've got a house, in fact, we were talking about it before the council meeting got started. It's in repossession.
Yeah, you were bringing that up last.
I can't get anybody to mow lawn. I know where the bills are. I know who's the estate who is going through the probation for the estate. I know who the lien holder is, but I contact all parties and nobody wants to take responsibility. So,
And that was where if you have this vacant fee, we can do something and then get the money back from the vacant fee.
So I'm assuming that's something that the council is going to address and like set a fee and put it into effect.
Yes.
Am
We
I right?
intend to adopt this ordinance and put that into effect. Yes.
And we'll get a lot of grief for doing that, too.
Sure we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Saw a bumper sticker coming back up the road today. It said, what is popular is not always right, and what is right is not always popular. And it kind of strikes home. Dave, you have anything else?
I think that's it, Mayor.
Okay. So in our correspondence you have in your package, Beach Street auctions, we did vote to reject the U-Bank bid, and a copy of the check is there in your package. Progressive Bank Property Exchange, Oil and Gas Conference, UCDA request to close a portion of Camden Avenue. I understand that may have changed.
They have worked out an agreement that's going to be acceptable to all parties. They did not want to block both lanes of Camden, so they've done some additional areas, and everybody's mentioned.
And may not use Camden.
May use part of Camden or not at all, correct.
But it's satisfactory for the vendors and IOGA they worked out a compromise?
Yeah, the difficulty is the Camden Avenue dormitories will be housing students during that time. And even though it's one day and one night, it could be the wrong day and the wrong night. And the fire department needs to be able to get into the front of those buildings. So they've made some other arrangements.
Solicitor permit request, Southwestern Advantage. Is that something we probably ought to act on?
Yes, that's typically, we've had one of these just about every year.
Get caught up with it. Advantage Learning System combines the best of books and software. Selling educational information and learning systems door to door Monday through Saturday from the end of May through September 1st, 2012. Address of companies given and a phone number and names. And so I would entertain a motion.
Is there a timeline as far as hours?
No.
Because I know we've done that before, but we said there should be an hour.
We set the hours. The hours on the permit.
9 to 8.
9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Yeah, it's been bold on the permit. Thanks for pointing that out. Couldn't find it. So, entertain a motion to approve this permit, solicitor permit for Southwestern Advantage.
I'll make that motion. They've come forward, they've requested the permit, they have the applicable times on it, they've got apparently their different licenses, and identification tags. It's something that we ask people to do when they solicit within the city limits. They've complied with our requests. We don't really have any problems with it. I think we should honor it.
Motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And second. Further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Have a letter in here from Rita Ostrowski. Clean up Meadow Street property. She points out some pretty good issues. I think Rich has been working on this even before this letter came in.
This is another one of these multi-year tests, but yes, it's subject to constant evaluation.
Right. So we'll keep after that.
It's being done?
I tell you the truth, I have difficulty, and part of it very openly is I've asked assistance both this year and previous years with the Department of Health. And when somebody is living in their own property, as they do, health department's unwilling unless they ask for help to go in there and do much. But I'm trying to address it from our standards as well. building standards.
And there's neighbors that have complained.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you would too.
And there's also a letter from Idris Gooden regarding property cleanup, letter from the Division of Culture and History, National Register of Historic Places.
That's our official notice.
An official notice that we've been recognized. And letter from Sudden Link regarding a channel lineup. Y'all have that down there at the press. June 21st, 2012, Disney Junior launches on Channel 56. Disney Soap Net channel is moving to digital tier on 353, and Golf Channel moves to Channel 72. That's from Michael Kellerman. We already did Tucker Ritchie Street report. Brings us to the consent agenda. Minutes of regular meeting May 3rd. Special meeting May 10th. Building and wiring permits. Approval of payment of bills. Proclamation service to youth champion. Proclamation friendly way day. City of Buckhannon audit for the year ending June 30, 2011. And official certification May 8, 2012 election. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify so by saying aye. Ayes have it. Consolidated Public Works Board recommendation removal of parking on Lemon Street. We've been kicking this thing down the street for a while now. Skeeter made a suggestion I think really would solve a lot of what we're looking at up there if we restricted the parking on the upper end of Lemon Street 30 feet back from the corner. Would give emergency vehicles and the garbage truck an opportunity to get around the corner. The request and the recommendation from Consolidated was to take all parking off of Lemon. So what's your pleasure? Should we take Skeeter's suggestion back to Consolidated Public Works Board and see how they feel on it?
Can we just do it?
Can we just do what?
What Skeeter wants to do. I mean, that seemed like a good suggestion to me.
I think we could try that. It'd be respectful to go back to the board and give them our recommendation after we've looked at it. Try that. If it doesn't work, then we'll take it all off.
Is that a motion, Skeeter?
Sure.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded that we restrict parking 30 feet from the, give me a compass heading. North,
The upper end.
up from the upper end
Yeah,
of Lemon
yes.
Street. That's good enough. Any other questions or discussion?
That's on both sides of the road, right?
Yeah, on both sides. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First reading ordinance 364.
Mayor, before I actually start into the ordinance, Mr. Smith has provided us with his plat, which we've blown up for everybody to see, but you all have your individual copies of this as well. I just want to point out what we're talking about. This is the West Main Street, South Kanawha Street intersection. Everybody knows where First Community Bank is. Everybody knows where the Upshur County Courthouse and Annex are. We're talking about the property behind those facilities. And as we get into the gridded and colored areas, yellow, the highlighted yellow area, is a longtime public alley, which is known as Stump Lane. I didn't know that until Mr. Smith did his platting work, but we have a Stump Lane. Maybe we should get Mr. Arnold to put a sign up there to that effect, since now it's going to be 2 stumps, because the former 10-foot wide Stump Lane, as a consequence of this swap that we actually effected a couple of years ago with First Community Bank, will allow for a 20-foot wide alley that will then make a 90-degree turn to the north. As you see that gray area, which will be dedicated by the Upshur County Commission to the city in conjunction with the red area that First Community Bank will be giving as a result of this ordinance will essentially allow a 20-foot wide roadway or alleyway that will go all the way up into the back of the Upshur County Annex and courthouse, or the annex, I'm sorry. It doesn't go all the way to the courthouse because we have Chancery Street that will allow this driveway to go all the way through. So it's a good thing. There's been a lot of urban renewal done up there by the bank as a consequence of this project. So if you'll bear with me, this is very much an administrative ordinance, but it's still one that we have to do. Ordinance number 364 of the City of Buckhannon, an ordinance approving the city's conveyance to First Community Bank, N.A., a national association, of that certain lot, tract, or parcel of land containing 1,200 square feet, more or less, owned by the city and being a part or portion of a public alley, in trade and exchange for that certain L-shaped strip of land containing 1,890 square feet, more or less, that has been or shall be developed for an expanded public alley, and a part or portion of which strip to be conveyed to the city is situated adjacent to an existing public alley, sometimes referred to as Stump Lane, said strip being currently titled with First Community Bank, N.A., but to be conveyed to the city, all of said real estate being situated in the City of Buckhannon, Buckhannon Corporation District, Upshur County, West Virginia. Whereas First Community Bank, N.A., a national association, is the titled owner of several lots, tracts, or parcels of land situated at or near the southwestern corner of the West Main Street and South Kanawha Street intersection in downtown Buckhannon, with buildings and other improvements located thereon. And whereas the City of Buckhannon is the owner of certain real estate that previously has been used as a public alley, and which real estate has been identified as being part of the city's street and alley system, the dimensions of which said alley vary from 7 feet to 10 feet in width and approximately 145 feet in length, which alley is situated immediately contiguous with, perpendicular to, and to the immediate north of a part or portion of the real estate proposed for trade and conveyance by First Community Bank, N.A. to the City of Buckhannon. And whereas First Community Bank, N.A. has inquired with the city respecting possible acquisition of the aforesaid 7 feet to 10 feet in width by 145 feet in length alley to optimize First Community Bank, N.A.'s real estate improvements realized at its downtown site, including the construction of a new parking lot to complement its commercial activities in downtown. And whereas the aforesaid 7 feet to 10 feet in width by 145 feet in length alley offers minimal benefit to the citizens of Buckhannon and no current use by the City of Buckhannon. And whereas First Community Bank, N.A. is the titled owner of real estate situated immediately contiguous to and abutting both South Kanawha Street and another public alley owned by the City of Buckhannon, this alley sometimes being referred to as Stump Lane, said Stump Lane being situated perpendicular to and intersecting with South Kanawha Street, and which Stump Lane presently is only 10 feet in width, thus limiting vehicular use. And whereas the opportunity of the city to acquire additional real estate abutting the 10 feet wide Stump Lane and to widen the said Stump Lane to a 20 feet width offers substantial benefit to the citizens of Buckhannon and the City of Buckhannon's municipal operations. And whereas First Community Bank, N.A. has committed to exchange with the City of Buckhannon an L-shaped strip of land containing 1,890 square feet, more or less, that is situated contiguous to and to the immediate west of the city's South Kanawha Street and further to the immediate north of the city's Stump Lane in trade for the here and above described aforesaid 7 feet to 10 feet in width by 145 feet in length alley presently owned by the city. And whereas pursuant to the statutory provisions of Chapter 8, Article 12, Section 18B of the West Virginia Code as amended, the city is specifically authorized and empowered to enter into real estate transactions involving the trade of municipally owned property for the acquisition of new or other property for the city without being required to publicly auction the municipally owned property. And whereas the council of the city of Buckhannon has determined that the proposed trade of city-owned property for First Community Bank NA owned property is a fair, reasonable, and proper real estate transaction that shall result in the public interest best being served, and in both the city and the public in general, realizing valuable benefits from the consummation of the proposed trade of the herein described property with First Community Bank NA, and whereas the statutory provisions of Chapter 8, Article 11, Section 3, Subsection 6 of the West Virginia Code as amended, specifically provide that both the purchase of private property by a municipality and the conveyance of municipally owned property shall be by ordinance. And finally, whereas the council of the city of Buckhannon desires in all respects to comply with the statutes of the state of West Virginia, and particularly with the immediately hereinbefore referenced state statutes, insofar as the acquisition, trading, and conveyance of the subject real estate is concerned, now therefore be it ordained and enacted by the council of the city of Buckhannon as follows. There are 4 articles to this ordinance. The first article are the findings of the council, which simply reiterates the whereas paragraph, so I'm not going to read those again. Article 2 is a more specific description of the city real estate which will be traded and conveyed to First Community Bank. Article 3 is the property that the city will be receiving from First Community Bank. And Article 4, as you can read, is the effective date of the ordinance that also sets forth the first reading, second reading. This is the first reading tonight. At the June 7th meeting, if you react affirmatively to it tonight, you'll entertain that on second reading. And then as per state law and our charter, 30 days thereafter, which puts us at July 7th. At any point after that, we can have our closing, like we did last week with Progressive Bank, which will involve an exchange of deeds with First Community Bank. Again, it's very much an administrative ordinance. As you know, the structures were torn down a couple of years ago by the bank. They put in a very nice parking lot. We had an oral agreement with them. In fact, I think I prepared a letter agreement between the bank and the city. This is just the ordinance that dots the final I's to legitimize everything that we did a couple of years ago. It's my recommendation that you pass tonight on first reading ordinance 364 of the city of Buckhannon.
Motion to approve or to pass ordinance number 364 on first reading.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Brings us down to comments. Michael, any more comments?
No comments.
Mr. Thomas?
Just want to, first of all, I want to thank Skeeter for his volunteering as the tactical medic for the police department. Appreciate the work you did there, Skeeter. Also, just the Ritchie Tucker Street's been a real issue for us for a long time, and I do hope we can move forward so that we can take care of other properties on a more timely basis. But it's one of those areas that I think we all have issues with and problems with. I know when I first went to the college in 1984, there was a lot of rental properties that we had. And I got a phone call, I think it was like the first or second week I was there, and somebody was complaining about a house. And at the same time, there was a issue with the bathrooms. And I sent a couple plumbers down to take care of it since it was our property. And they went in the house and they came back out and said, there's no way we're going into that house. And I had to call the health department. It was just a nightmare. And you get in a bureaucratic mess constantly when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, either with a property or even when you're renting a property. It's just really tough to deal with. And I think we have to be sensitive to that. And I appreciate Rich Clemens and what he has to do in his position there. He's got to feel very uncomfortable sometimes writing some of these letters and dealing with the kind of individuals that he has to deal with. And I think, Rich, I thank you for taking this on. It's not an easy thing to do. That's the only comments I have today.
John? Skeeter? Scott?
I think it's fitting that we remember this Memorial Day weekend, all those who have given service to our country.
Rich?
I agree with Scott. Thanks, Dave, for your comments. I just note that I've sent out probably 15 letters the past couple of days. Drove around a little bit today, and you know, some people get that letter and they take action. A couple of the worst cases are already cleaned up. I'm sure there'll be others that'll send letter 2 and 3 and 4 to before something happens. So, a lot depends on the individual that property's in charge of. So that's all I have.
Okay, nobody here from the street department, but I want to publicly thank them for their cleanup efforts. I know that the festival committee, just absolutely, that board works their tails off to try to make it all work out, and as you're coming down to the final days, you think, boy, it's just not going to work this year, and then it just all seems to fall in place. They do a marvelous job, but the street department gets out there and cleans it up. Get all kind of comments from people who cannot believe the mess they saw at 11 o'clock Friday night and Saturday morning. No paper, no debris. It's just credit to what they do. Y'all got some emails from me about the annex to the emergency operations plan, and most recently I got a note from Jim Ferry that said that the LEPC, the Lewis Upshur, LEPC, what's that, Skier?
I don't remember what it is.
Emergency enrollment planning.
Guys,
Emergency Planning Commission.
yeah, Emergency Planning Commission. But Lewis and Upshur County are in that thing together and have been for a number of years, and it works really well. They joint exercise together, we do, with Lewis County. But the LEPC has a little money in their budget, and I think I told you that we could get Jeff Harvey to do an annex to that county plan for $500, and they offered to give a grant to any city in the 2-county region who wanted to do an annex of they would give us a grant of $500. One of the things that we would have to become a member, an attending voting member of the LEPC. So if there are no objections, I think we'll accept that grant and get that annex done, and we'll end up appointing somebody to serve on that LEPC, and I think they meet once a month or once every 2 months or something like that. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything to offer or ask? Not, we'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.